Installed on this bike back here are the brand new Wheeltop EDS disc system. This is a brand new braking system specifically designed for mountain bikes. They call it the MA3000, and today I'm going to show you how the installation went to let you know my first thoughts on this particular setup. Now take note, I've been told that this particular setup that I received was an initial run batch, so kind of like a prototype, and is not actually the full retail design. The full retail design will come with a few extra things and also has some improvements over what I experienced. Now, I have asked Wheeltop to send me the retail version of this instead of this prototype version, just so I can compare what you would be purchasing versus what I personally received. There's a few quirks with this brake setup that's a little bit different than any other brand that I've seen, and also they act a little bit different than what I would expect. Let's go ahead and do the install real quick, and then we'll take it out to the trail, and then I'll give you my thoughts on what I think this brake setup is actually like, and if I think it's worth the money. Let's go. Now, whenever I first opened up the MA3000s, I was pretty impressed with the overall packaging. Wheeltop has done a pretty good job of making their packaging look really nice. I have installed several of their wireless rear derailleurs, and I also installed their gravel bike group set, which came with the hydraulic brakes and the wireless shifters. So I have really high hopes for this particular setup because I've used their hydraulic brakes over on their gravel side, and I figured these have to be pretty good also, but we're gonna have to find out when we hit up the trail. At first look, the lever is very interesting. This is a very mechanical looking style design, kind of industrial. You've got the silver screws up top, which are a little bit different. I almost wish that these were painted black personally, just so it was kind of this whole stealthy look. But the levers are nice and thick, but they also have this kind of machined feel to them. And they implemented a single finger pull design, which is something that we see on like higher end Shimano's and higher end SRAMs. But these brakes look really similar to the way Magura's are actually set up, with the main part of the lever actually sticking out further than being longer across the bars. One of the things that I was really pleased with right out of the gate was the fact that they put in a toolless design to adjust the lever reach. This is something that you won't really need to mess with all that much, but whenever you do need to mess with it, it always seems like you're out in the middle of the trail and you don't have your tools with you. With this, you can just turn a knob and actually make the adjustment. But I've got more on that whenever we get out on the trail. Now, from the base of the lever where the fluid actually comes out of it into the hose, this is a different design. I haven't seen really any companies that I can think of that actually use this piece right here to connect to the lever. Typically, you see this piece connected to the caliper, and then it's just a straight push in with an olive and a barb on the actual lever. However, they kind of did this backwards compared to what other companies are doing. I think there's a couple key advantages of that. One, you can really dial in the angle of the hose coming straight out of the lever. So if you do have handlebars where the hydraulic hose goes through the handlebars, this will be super easy to install because with this particular end on it, it'll actually turn and you can put it right into the port. Now, I'm not sure what the internal diameter is of this particular hose, but it looks similar to pretty much all hydraulic hose out there. The barb and olive, in my opinion, seem to look a lot like the Shimano setup, so I'm sure that these are probably really easy to find. Now, the hose does push in traditionally on the caliper side, where you've got your barb and your olive, and then you just tighten down the bolt that goes on the outside of it, and that basically pushes that together, tightens it up with the barb and olive in there and keeps it secure and keeps all the fluid from leaking out. Now, when it comes to the caliper, these look super industrial in my opinion. I do like the little pop of color that they added, and I also like the fact that the brake pads have these fins on them. However, I'm not super sure which brake pads these actually take. If I were to guess, I'm guessing that these take a standard Shimano style pad. Now, one thing we haven't talked about on this bike is how much these brakes cost. As of recording this, the brakes were actually on sale for right around $209. That's pre-order price, and full retail seems to be right around $240. Now, these do seem to be pretty competitively priced. However, that all is based on performance. If these brakes don't perform better than, say, an MT201, then there's not really any point of going with this particular brake versus an MT201, or maybe the 401 if we're talking about 4-piston setups. But there are other brands out there that are a little bit cheaper, like you can get the Tektro 4-piston brakes for a little bit less than $200 for the entire setup. Now, one thing I did notice on my particular box, they didn't come with any rotors. All you got were the calipers, the hose, and the actual lever itself. However, on their website, they do show that it comes with an actual bleed kit, and that's something that I want to go over next. So when bleeding these brakes, I wasn't really sure which port to open up. These are pretty much just prototype brakes at the point that I received them. So I didn't have any instructions on which port to open up on the lever, so I could do just a simple lever bleed. Well, I eventually figured out which port it was, or I think I did, and I was able to do a lever bleed on it, but the brakes felt a little bit soft and squishy. Since the lever bleed didn't seem to quite give me the performance that I wanted, I was worried that there was air trapped down in the caliper, so I did a full-on bleed. I filled up a syringe and attached it to the caliper and then pushed fluid all the way up through, making sure that these things were properly bled. Or so I thought. I did wind up emailing Wheeltop and asking them for the proper bleed procedures because every brake is a little bit different, and I still felt like these were a little bit squishy and not exactly where I wanted them to be. Now, with that said, I haven't even gone outside my driveway with these, so I needed to hit up a trail to actually see what these brakes would perform like. So hitting up the trail, I was really pleased with the way these brakes looked. I just think the industrial design is cool, it's unique, it's something different than what we're currently seeing in a lot of the mainstream brake lines. And having something unique on your bike really does set it apart and could potentially make for a pretty cool build if you wanted to upgrade some parts. Now, this is where I want to talk about the adjustable lever. This was going to be super clutch, or so I thought. Whenever I was out on the ride, I felt like my levers were too far out, so I proceeded to pull the levers back in, where it felt really comfortable while I was riding. However, I instantly noticed I almost had no braking power and my brake levers were touching my bars. So I'm not really sure what's going on there, and that makes me think maybe I didn't do the proper bleed procedure. So I'm hoping that Wheeltop gets back to me and gives me the exact procedure of how to bleed those brakes to see if I did it right or if I need to do it over again. So since I couldn't actually adjust those levers to where I wanted, I had to pull them back out to be able to get any type of braking performance. Now, this is where I feel like maybe the prototype version isn't as good as the retail version, or at least that's my hopes. These levers seem to have a lot of pull before the bite of the brake actually happened. And sometimes with other brands, you can actually feel the pads engage with the disc. With these, it was like on or off. They really did bite down hard whenever they did make contact, and they stopped me appropriately. However, it was pretty shocking every single time whenever I stopped. My first thought was, wow, if you aren't experienced at biking, you're definitely going to go over the bars with how quick these things bite. And I think the main reason why it was so shocking to me was how far I had to pull that lever back before it actually bit. I almost thought that the brakes weren't going to work, period. However, they worked really well whenever it did finally bite. That's something that I think Wheeltop needs to address, and maybe the full retail version actually has addressed that, but I'm not really sure about that until I get my hands on a set of those. Because as of right now, this version that I've got, it's just got too much pull before those brakes actually engage. So another thing that I did notice whenever I was out on the ride is the wiggle in the lever. There's a little bit of wiggle up and down, and there's a little bit of wiggle before it actually starts to engage. And it's only a few millimeters, but it's those little pieces of precision that make a product feel either premium or make it not feel premium. So if Wheeltop can tighten that down, or if they've already done that on their retail setup, then I think these will feel a lot better. So overall, my experience with a $240 full retail setup from Wheeltop was a little lackluster, if I'm 100% honest with you. And I really hope that Wheeltop sees this and they make some improvements, or maybe they'll send me over the full finished version and I can try those out. Maybe they made some improvements, maybe they didn't, but in my opinion, at $240, these brakes should perform at such high performance that you shouldn't have to worry about all these little details. I think the industrial look and design of these brakes are fantastic. I love them. They set themselves apart from the other brands out there. They have a little bit of Magura styling, but they have their own kind of industrial design. I would really like to see these in a full silver setup. I think that would be really awesome. So with that said, I really hope that Wheeltop sends over their full retail version so I can see if there are improvements and if they fix some of the problems that I ran into, because I would really like to give them a shot. Their wireless derailleurs are awesome. Their gravel group set is fantastic. That hydraulic brake setup has been really good. I have had zero complaints about it. It's just worked right out of the gate. And I think that they can do the same thing with this setup. However, with the pre-production version that I got, I just think that there's some small quirks that they need to work out. Once they get those ironed out, they could have a really solid product. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this and you're enjoying my content, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of the design of the Wheeltop MA3000s. And if you guys are really enjoying my content, jump over to my Patreon, Mike's Unlocked Garage. For as little as $3 a month, you help out this channel and you'll get some extra content like extra posts, extra pictures, and extra videos, and some behind the scenes stuff. But as always, get out there and ride your bike.
I got you, yeah, SOS, thought you wasn't